Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to DABCC Radio. I am Doug Brown, and I'm really excited because we have a guy that I've never had on the show before, that I've known for a long time, that I really love seeing, and he's going to be on the show with us, and his name is Jim Moyle. And Jim is recently taken up a job, sort of like I have, really the same role and responsibility that I do with iGel. He's doing it with FSLogix, and that is a tech evangelist. So you're going to see a lot of this guy run around talking about proselytizing, evangelizing all the amazing things that FSLogix does. And they do amazing things. So they have picked up some really smart guys. We're going to talk a bit about that, and we're just going to have a fun podcast. I get to throw questions at him. What's the future of the EUC world? What do you think of this? What do you think here? And see how he responds to it. And I'm excited about this. So I hope you guys are too. So we're going to, with no further ado, I'll shut up and jump into my podcast with Jim Moyle, the tech evangelist at FSLogix. Okay, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I'm looking forward to it. I've never had you on the podcast. I've known you for quite some time, and every time I see you, you try to give me a little bit of noise and give me some grief. So here's my chance to have you on my podcast show and give you some noise and grief. What do you think about that?
It's not giving you noise and grief, Doug. It's just the British way. It's friendly ribbing is what I would say. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to having a great conversation.
Yeah, me too. You're a very smart guy, so this will be a lot of fun. And you're now at FSLogix, so we're going to talk a lot about that, but we're also just going to talk about the industry as a whole and what's going down in our space today, and this is what I'm so looking forward to. So, of course, the FSLogix stuff, I mean, come on, I've been a fan of FSLogix since day one, so who doesn't love Kevin, right?
Well, that is absolutely true, and we'll perhaps get onto that in a bit when we talk about why I joined.
You got it. So for those people who don't know who Jim Moyle is, which is a shame, it's a travesty, you need to meet this guy. And if you don't know who you are, if they don't know who you are, can you tell them who are you and what are you doing over at FSLogix nowadays?
So I'm basically a loud Brit who occasionally gets his head around a bit of tech. I've been playing about in the EUC area for 20 odd years, getting old now. Used to be a Citrix consultant back in the day, so I worked my way up and around the industry from there. As you say, currently and fairly recently joined FSLogix as their technical evangelist.
That's cool. So we have on the line today, we have two technical evangelists. What do you think about that?
I think it's a stupid title, but I quite enjoy it.
You really do think it's a stupid title? Why do you think it's a stupid title?
Because it's a shorthand. It's a shorthand for something people in the industry know. So you get up on stage, you speak a bit, you go to meetings, you evangelize the product, and people in our echo chamber know exactly what that means, and that's fine. But you say it to anybody else outside, and they give you this look like, I thought you did IT. Yeah. What's this religion term?
IT is a religion, is it not?
Well, you got that Apple Windows stuff, which I'm only bringing up because I know for a fact that you have had a brand new Apple Mac delivered to you just before we're speaking, and I bet you're dying to get off and unbox that puppy.
Yeah, it's unboxed and it's sitting there downloading iCloud stuff to it. It'll be my portable Mac. So I'll still use the one that's docked. But I am quite excited about it. And on that note, it's quite interesting. I was going through customs. I was coming back to America 6 months ago or something, and the guy asked me, the customs guy in good old America asked me, so what do you do? And I said, well, I'm an evangelist. He goes, so you work for the church? And I was like, no, I don't work for the church. I'm a tech evangelist. He goes, so you do tech work for the church? I was like, no, I don't work for the church. I'm a tech evangelist. I go around and I speak about technology. I preach about technology. He goes, well, what's that have to do with the church? I said, it has nothing to do with the church. I was like, I speak, I go up. I'm like I'm a technical guy that gets up and talks about the church. He goes, well, why do you have evangelist in your title? I was like, because that's what we call it. I was like, look it up in the dictionary. That's what I said to the guy. And then he couldn't figure out. And finally I said to him, yeah, I work for the church. And he's like, well, this could have been a lot easier if you just said you work from the church to begin with. Why did you tell me? I was like, because I don't work for the church. And finally it's like, man, this guy's guarding my country. So anyway, I tend to agree with you there, but I do like the title, and it's definitely cool. It's a cool job to get up and share with people what we do, right? What we love, the passion that we have. So
the job itself is very cool. I used to be so terrified of standing up in public and speaking, and as the years went by and I got more and more comfortable with it, and now I just adore it. I love the job. I love speaking, and I love sharing.
Yeah, I do too. When I first joined Citrix, I almost quit because I realized I was going to be a more on the pre-sale side, and I wanted to be an engineer that lived in the data center, and one of my mentors in life told me, no, Doug, you'll like it. You'll like getting in front of people, and you'll see it in their eyes when they get it. When you tell them about what you love and the passion that you have, and they'll get that. Now you just got somebody. You just got them on your train. You got them onto what you love, and that's exactly the piece I love about it. We're in a great space at a great time, and to sharing all this amazing technology is a privilege, really, at the end of the day. So anyway, so you recently left Atlantis. You've been in Atlantis for quite some time. Can you talk a bit about that? Why did you leave Atlantis? Why did you join FSLogix?
So I was at Atlantis for 6.5 years and really enjoyed my time there. It was a superb bunch of people to work with. But Atlantis was going through an M&A process, which, as we both know, can be a pretty bumpy process at times. And so it proved. And eventually, it was successfully sold to Hive.io. But during that process, myself and a few others as well decided to take that opportunity to start looking for new challenges. And that's what I did, and ended up at FSLogix.
Well, nothing against Atlantis. I love what you guys were, and like you said, you had great people. I mean, it just so who's who of really some great talent. But come on, FSLogix with Kevin and Brad and the gang. I mean, you're at a great company nowadays. Not that, again, not selling Atlanta short, but that's a nice new role. I like that.
Yeah, well, I was on the board of advisors for FSLogix for ever since the start, really, when Kevin was kind enough to invite me to help him in just a small way. And so I had a reasonably close amount of contact with Kevin and the crew, even when I was working at Atlantis. So it was almost a really natural fit to move from Atlantis to FSLogix. I mean, and what you were saying before about how nice is Kevin, and you also mentioned somebody who's a mentor to you. I mean, sort of Kevin's sort of been that way for me for a long time. He's got such a wealth of experience, not just in the technical side, but in the business side. And, if you talk about somebody who's been successful doing software startups in the Valley or in this space, then Kevin's the first name that comes to mind, right?
That's exactly right. I met Kevin in, I think, 2002 when he was doing the T-Scale stuff. And I mean, that definitely affected Citrix. It's still in the product, isn't it? It's still his code in the product, or has that been basically phased out over the years?
I think that went away with 64-bit.
Yeah. That's right. Okay.
But, I think it was they put it to 64-bit, even though it wasn't necessary. It's anyway.
Yeah. So. Cool. So for those who don't know about FSLogix, can you tell us who what are you guys doing? What's the goal over there?
So essentially the goal is to solve people's problems. It's not a company that's saying we're going to produce a new platform and we're going to change the world. It's not about that. It's about taking individual pain points that people have and solving them in a quick and easy way. And we've got a number of solutions which help people out with that, which we can dig into in a little bit.
Cool. And then, of course, you're not the only new hire. Can you share some of the other rock stars who have recently joined FSLogix? Because I know you guys picked up a couple guys over there, too. Can you maybe talk about some of the changes that Kevin's making in the crew?
Yeah, absolutely. So we also picked up Dr. Benny Trish, who's another old friend of mine, a fellow CTP, another evangelist who stands up in front of people as well. It's so great to work with Benny. I've actually been wanting to work with Benny for years. I've actually tried to get him on at Atlantis, but that didn't work out for whatever reason. So it's superb to be able to finally get to work with Benny, and we've got some stuff coming up where we're going to do some lab work, do some testing. And now I'm going to head over to Germany and stay in his house for a week or so, and we're just going to get deep into the tech, which I'm really looking forward to, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then, and we've picked up Chris Plant, who's just got announced as well. He's a super biz dev guy also from Atlantis, who I knew from there and really wanted to get on board as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Oh, going to Benny's place, that's going to be awesome. Benny's amazing, and he's German methodical, which is the highest compliment I can give somebody in my way of talking, which is very, very, it's not measure once, cut or measure twice, cut once. It's measure 3 times and cut very carefully. And the product, the output is always perfect. So, yeah, I like Benny. Benny's a good guy. So let's talk a bit about the EUC, the EUC world, right? So before we dive more into FSLogix and stuff, so what do you think of it? Well, EUC is changing quite a bit, though it's always changing, right? I mean, we've both been in this business a long time, but things are sort of speeding up and slowing down in some other areas. So what's your take on the current state of the EUC world?
So since the entry into the market from VMware and Amazon and you got a lot of other smaller players as well, Microsoft bringing back its focus onto RDS, it's the competition that really excites me, right? Because it means the innovation is still pounding on. For a while there, back when it was just XenApp and there was no VMware, there was about sort of 4 or 5 years where it was a little stagnant and nobody was doing anything. It was getting a little dull. And at that time, I was looking to get out of EUC because it was boring me. But then you started getting the competition, and then it started getting interesting again. And now you've got this whole on-prem to cloud stuff, and it's again getting exciting and again getting even more interesting. Interesting.
You mentioned you mentioned a couple things, so let's take them on-prem and cloud. So we have this idea of VDI nowadays, and the year
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's a big thing, out there. But the years, you had all these guys running around saying it's the year of VDI, the year of VDI. God, those people, I'd like to meet them now and ask them, how's that year of VDI working out for you? But and nowadays we have DaaS coming around too, which is the cloud, so that's on-prem versus cloud. Where do you see that? What's your take on-prem versus cloud? What's the Jim Moyle take on that?
So essentially, I've been having some really interesting conversations about this. Now, so you've got your new startup who's into all the SaaS services and, they don't care about cloud at all. Forget about it for them. But then
they don't care about cloud? The people that are using the SaaS?
They don't care about VDI in the cloud.
Okay.
They don't care. They don't have a legacy Windows apps tail, right?
Okay.
So they're just SaaS through and through. So it doesn't matter for them.
They're the guys on the Chromebooks.
Yeah. Or the new MacBook.
Yeah.
But for everybody else, it matters, right? Because they've got this long tail of Windows apps, and if you look at where development time, there's still a massive amount, surprising amount of Win32 apps, WPF, UWP. There's still a huge amount of development work going into these applications, and you've got to find a economic way to provide them. And this on-prem versus cloud is almost the wrong question. It's what gives you the features that you want at the price you want. Now, I don't really care whether that's AWS or Azure or on-prem or colo or managed service. I was about to swear then. I just about stopped myself. I don't mind. So effectively, right now, the cloud is only useful for a certain subset of feature requirements. And if you have applications which don't have a client-server latency requirement, and you have a user that just uses applications without the latency requirement, then they're actually really easy to move into the cloud. And I recently had a chat with somebody who's in charge of 200,000 users and looking at their new strategy for the desktop. And he says, I want everybody to be in the cloud as much as possible. So those people where they don't have an application which prevents them moving, if they're working 40 hours a week, I want to pay 40 hours. I don't want to pay a penny more. And he says that their cost modeling on this, and it's fairly in depth as you would imagine for such a large organization, works out for them in terms of doing that over on-prem. Now, there are problems with that. It's how do you move people? There's problems with disconnected sessions because that keeps VMs around when you're paying for them, and it breaks your cost model if you only want to pay for people when they're working. There's problems in terms of provisioning because, if you take some of these cloud companies that almost none of them have got a non-persistent solution for provisioning, so they don't have a quick, easy one. So there's also, and you get that added to log on time. So there's all kinds of issues around the economics of the cloud, but it's almost there. Only for certain use cases, only for certain feature sets. But yeah, it's really close, I think.
Yeah, I think of DaaS or the cloud as it's definitely the future, right? We're going to move in that way, but I like to describe it as, why did we deploy Citrix back in the 90s? What problem were we trying to solve, or what were we trying to, what was some of the huge benefits we got from it, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to speed up Outlook. We're trying to open up our CRM applications, ERP applications really fast. We're trying to get to that PDF without, having it download over a Cisco VPN for 10 minutes, right? So we put our app where our data was. And by moving the app where the data was, it gave us really great user experience, right? I remember being able to, just get to my data really quick and really fast. So that was one of the driving forces, is to put the app where the data is, because that's where it should be, right? And and as we move to the cloud, I think that if our data is sitting locally and we put our desktop in the cloud, well, that's completely opposite of why we deployed a remoting solution in the first place. And it starts giving us a negative or a lesser user experience. Now with bandwidth increasing, and when 5G comes around, that's going to be a moot point, right? But right today, that's still an issue. Right. So then you get into solutions like, hybrid DaaS. Right. And there's I know Intesis 360 has an interesting offer, and a bunch of guys do WorkSpot. Right. What they're doing with the hybrid, hey, we can put this in prem, but you still get the benefits of, of this cloud sort of mentality. I think that's really interesting. Have you looked into any of that stuff? What's your view there?
So what you're saying is exactly what I was saying, right? The latency sensitive applications where you've got your data on-prem in your desktop on the cloud. You want to avoid that situation if at all possible. As far as the new boys around, the WorkSpots and the frames and stuff. So although it's an awkward phrase, they're cloud native. Their thing is, right, you want to pay by the hour. You want a consumption. It needs to be slick. It needs to be easy. You don't have to spend a huge amount of time automating stuff or bastardizing the on-prem software to work in the cloud. It just works there natively. And they've done that very well. The charge back and all of that's great. What all the solutions in that area are missing right now is all the surrounding necessities. So, have they got a hybrid or different app delivery solution? What are they doing about profiles? What are they doing about data migration, data sharing? And it's almost as if, no, we've got this great broker thing and we've got cloud economics. Oh, great. That's like step 1. 2, 3, and 4 have yet to come. And it's whether they partner their way through this. So, if I'd be very happy to, for FSLogix to be a part of that for those companies. to help them out and bring those extra capabilities into it? Or are they going to take a different route and develop it themselves? So if you look at Amazon's stuff, and it's interesting because Amazon haven't really changed their offering for quite a few years since it came out. And it's kind of a bit stale. You can't even get Windows 10 on there at the moment.
No, it's 2016.
Yeah. 2016. It's not actually Windows 10, but yeah, as you say, 2016. But they've just started hiring a whole load of people in the Workspaces area. So has Amazon finally said, right, we're going to get serious about this?
Yeah.
Are we going to start either buying some companies or developing it ourselves? So that's going to be really interesting to watch as well.
You know, I wrote down Amazon when you mentioned it, and one of your coworkers, Andrew Wood, went over to Amazon and is doing your former coworker from Atlantis, right? He's doing the Workspaces stuff at AWS now.
Yeah,
and I'm a huge fan of AWS, and I'm a huge fan of Workspaces. And people are like, "Why do you care about Workspaces?" One, I use it, believe it or not, and you get like 40 hours free a month. And that's perfect for me. And I actually have the iGel UMS running up there, so I can get to it from my iPad or anywhere else if I want to demo it, or it's just nice to have up there. But I think that it's, back to the conversation around when you put your app where your data is. Where are companies putting a lot of their data nowadays, right? They're bursting it up to Amazon. They're putting their DRs up into Amazon. They're slowly starting to move data up there. I think that we're going to wake up one day and we're going to realize, you know what? All of our data is sitting in Amazon already. And they have this great solution they've been methodically building over the years. And if you follow their blog, almost weekly they're adding something to Workspaces. Last week they added better GPU support. They added HIPAA compliance. They added something else that was quite cool. And they're just this drumbeat, but it's not their focus. So they're not going to beat up by the analysts saying, "Hey, how's that Workspaces stuff going for you?" You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so they have the ability to build something. They have the money. They have the expertise. They have they're smart guys over there. And I think we're going to wake up and Amazon's going to have taken over the world. And
yes. So it's interesting. So you say my data next to my desktop. You've got to be a little bit careful about that, as I found with a couple of solutions, is that just because you're buying some database platform and you're sticking all your data in there and you think, well, I've got a client app that accesses that data, then if they're both in Amazon, then I'm going to, or even both in the same region. So they're both in the same data center, right? So you've got to be careful about that. But even if they're both in the same region, this is not a flat network they've got.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. There is bottlenecks, there is, subdivisions, there is a whole load of things in the background that these cloud providers are doing that may have a latency effect on that client server app. So just because they're in the same region in the same cloud doesn't mean that if you're, in terms of latency, your desktop is next to your data. So you just got to be careful around architecting that.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, and And I don't think it's today. Today Amazon Workspaces is nice, but they need a better protocol. They need a real desktop operating system. But of course, Microsoft just announced desktop licensing a couple weeks ago, so a month ago or something like that. So, we finally have that now, and that'll allow companies like Amazon to do that in the clouds. But it's really interesting nowadays. The bottom line here is that we're, things are transitioning. Is it ready? Yeah, maybe for some people. For majority of the people we deal with, no. The people listening, no. But in those guys, if we have this conversation in 5 years, I think we'll look back and be like, yeah, it was, now we're in the cloud, right?
Yep.
So
yeah. And I think so people have said, right, you pick your software as a service first. If that doesn't do your needs, you pick your platform as a service. If that doesn't do your needs, infrastructure as a service. And VDI and RDSH sits kind of halfway in between that platform as a service and infrastructure as a service, because it can fall either side of that boundary, right? There's companies offering as a platform, or you could roll your own. You could say, actually, those features aren't what I need. I can say, right, I need a whole load of different stuff. I've got a very specialized environment that none of this cookie cutter platform is given to me. I can roll my own. And people are starting to do that as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Office 365, here's a good one. It's a cloud service, and I always describe it as, Office 365 was not a home run. To use an American phrase, for you understand baseball, don't you? Or do you think it's something like rounders?
I don't follow baseball or rounders, but I have heard the phrase home run before.
Okay.
So I can grok the lingo. We'll go for it.
Okay, my British friends always, baseball. What's this? I mean, obviously I know you, but they always, and you like, being a bit cheeky. I can imagine you'd make some comment about baseball, but they said, baseball, is that rounders? I was like, I don't even know what rounders is, but anyway, so it's not. I've always said it's not a home run; it's a grand slam, right? I mean, it's everywhere. Everyone's using it. So, what do you think of Office 365?
So, if you look back 18 months, 2 years, it was something that nobody was using. If I talk to customers now, they're either on it or they're planning to go to it. And the people who aren't full in either of those two buckets, it's minuscule. And it's not just Outlook and, Exchange Online. A couple of years ago, there were still conversations around, all right, are you using Jabber or are you using Link? And there was a massive sort of heterogeneous world in terms of unified communications, but that's also changed. And now Skype for Business is not totally as successful as Office 365, but it's getting there. It's absolutely getting there. The one part of that jigsaw puzzle where things are lagging behind a bit, I feel, is OneDrive. OneDrive, as yet, it's sufficient for some enterprises, but for others, it's absolutely not.
Yeah. And why? Where is it lacking?
So, if you look at the immediacy of sync, which Dropbox gives you, OneDrive doesn't have that. It's slow. If you look at RBAC controls, and if you look at permissioning, and if you look at essentially what the enterprise needs, right? The enterprise needs to be able to have those dials to fiddle and checkbox to check to be able to fit in with their security and compliance models and all of that. Then perhaps you could look at, maybe ShareFile is a better product for the enterprise than OneDrive. I know that Microsoft are iterating on it, but I don't think for the very large enterprise, at least, it's not quite there yet.
Yeah. So what do you think is some of the challenges around Office 365 are, because it is a cloud service, right? But there's quite a bit. I mean, I know that, and then that's going to lead me into the question, what does FSLogix do with Office 365? So maybe you can answer, both at the same answer.
So Office 365 is as everything Microsoft has ever done, is designed for local. Even though it sounds silly saying it's a cloud service. But if you look at the way that it acts and the way it needs to act to work in a performant way, then you can't do online searching anymore. Now, us Citrix guys, we know from ages on a Xenet farm or in VDI, as long as it's non-persistent VDI, you do online search because you can't have that cached OST. Now, you could compensate for that by beefing up your Exchange farm and making that online search quite quick. In Azure, you can't. So your online search sucks. And you've got no choice. You can't go to Microsoft and say, can you chuck a bit more resources against the Exchange online servers I'm using? That's not going to work. So now we're starting to need new solutions because we've lost control of the back end. So some of the workarounds that we used to be able to do aren't there. There's other stuff as well, which Exchange Online is not completely doesn't have complete feature parity with on-prem Exchange. For instance, a cached GAL, so your global address list. That's not available if you're Exchange Online. But on-prem, you can cache a GAL, you get quick searching through your GAL. Now, there's a very good reason why I've just mentioned those two features in particular, because it ties in with one of the four FSLogix products, which is the Office 365 containers, which attempts to get around these problems. So Windows loves local. Like I said, Windows loves to think stuff is local. You can't have online search anymore. You need to have a cached OST file, and you need cached search as well to enable search. But you've got a non-persistent desktop. You can't be downloading 10 gigs and re-indexing every time you log in. You need a different solution. So all of the FSLogix sort of 4 products are built around one single technology, which is an agent, which comprises of effectively a filter driver and some rules. And that's about it. And we've sort of rolled that into some really cool different products. The Office 365 one will effectively make Office work in a non-persistent environment, whether that's OneDrive, whether that's search and indexing for Office or for Outlook, or whether and for on-prem for the global address list as well. Now, Office 365 is great for us in terms of people finding the product. It says Office 365 in the name. People are saying, I'm doing Office 365, I've got this problem. And they find Google helps with the Google juice. There is a problem with it, though. And that is that the feature set is just as relevant to a on-prem implementation of Exchange and Skype for Business, because it just makes cache mode work. So you can change your on-prem infrastructure from online search to cache mode. You can roam your GAL. You can roam your OneDrive. And the way it does this is we got a VHD which we attach at login, so everything roams with the user. Filter driver makes it available as if it's local, so Outlook thinks it's local. So not just the OST is roamed, but the indexing as well, and not just for VDI. So this is quite easy for VDI comparatively. Very, very difficult for multi-user, so RDSH based, because the indexing is all in the same database for all the users. So now you've got to pull that particular user's data out of the single database and then roam it as they go around sessions. There's also a problem with OST. So now Microsoft supports OSTs on SMB shares. Great. They won't support it for multi-session access, and they won't support it for performance. So you've got a problem when you've got somebody who's got Outlook on a seamless app, and they've got Outlook on their desktop, and they're both pointing to the same OST file on a network share. You're going to corrupt that OST. If you want performance, and you've got so many file opens and closes as Outlook thinks it's local, and opens and closes it so many times, you're going to have an extreme load on your SAN, which is why Microsoft won't support you for performance. Stick it in a VHD, however, and you solve those problems, because you're only opening and closing the VHD once, and you're attaching it at runtime. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. So you just described anything else to add around that? I'd like you to. My next question will be to sort of just. You mentioned it's one of the things that FSLogix does. I'd like you to just explain the other things you guys do. But anything to add around what you guys are doing with Office 365?
So that's it. It's simple. You just drop it in, it works.
Yeah.
Which is actually all of the FSLogix. All of the FSLogix products work like that. It's super simple and super scalable, which is one of the reasons I joined the company and why I love it so much, because it is easy. Yeah,
it's Kevin's design. It's his mindset. It doesn't need to be some giant complex monstrosity. It should just drop in, work, be done with it, move on.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the way all his solutions have been since I've known him for a long time now. So yeah, that makes sense. So can you describe some of the other things you guys are doing at FSLogix?
Yeah, so we've also got a profile solution, which works in a very similar way. We keep the profile in a VHD and roam that VHD with a user. Windows thinks it's local because of the filter driver. So there's a couple of things that it gets around. So there's always been that big debate about app data, right? So you got a standard roaming profile. Where do you put app data? Do you use folder redirection? And you have to right size your SAN to within an inch of its life to make that work? Or do you say, actually that's too hard, and I'm going to not do folder redirection on app data. I'm going to copy it down and write it back at log on and log off. And then you've got the problem that you're adding on to your login time. So you get rid of that decision because it's a local profile now. You don't have a big load on your SAN because, again, it's inside a VHD. So your SAN's only just doing one open on that VHD, and then everything else happens inside of that. So instant attach at logon, so super quick logon. But you're also local with app data, and you're roaming that. It's interesting, really. Now, if you've got multiple access to that VHD, so you've got a VDI with a Zen app, seamless app, you need to be able to control how that interaction works. And we can do some cool things with Delta files on the VHD and then merging them back that helps out with that as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Anything else?
Yeah, so I just want to make the point that this is a local profile that we're moving around. It's not a roaming profile. Do you see what I mean? There's a big difference into Windows thinking it's local and it being a changed roaming profile. Because like I said, Windows loves local. Everything works if it's just local. And this is a local profile that we're moving around.
Yeah, makes total sense to me. Makes total sense. Okay, so anything else FSLogix does?
There's a couple more things, actually.
Yeah.
So app masking is a really interesting technology. It's the first one FSLogix came out with, actually. Again, based on the filter driver and a set of rules. So as you well know, there's 101 different ways you can get an app to an OS, whether that's streaming, whether that's layering, whether that's installing it in the base image, whether it's delivering it as a seamless app. I've never seen any of these solutions, including installing the base image, especially on RDSH, that will cover 100% of the use cases. Almost everybody has to have some kind of hybrid approach towards app delivery. And app masking is part of that hybrid approach, I believe. So what it is you've got an application installed locally, but say it's the accounting app, and you don't want your marketing people to be able to open or do anything with your accounting application. But it's installed there in the base image. So what we do is we set up a whole set of rules. That's automated, by the way. It's just a one-click setup of the rules. And we can hide that application dependent on the user's login. Now, people find this a bit hard to grok sometimes because they're thinking, hang on a minute, that means I've got to install all my applications in my base image, and then my base image gets huge. And that's sort of true. But if you're using a non-persistent technology like PVS, like MCS, like Composer, then you're not moving that around. You're creating a Delta file, like, say, an example of PVS. Whether you're streaming your application via AppV or whether you're streaming it via PVS from the base image, it's still exactly the same amount of blocks you need to transfer for those things to execute. So it's not actually changing your network conditions or your network load. It's just making the compatibility easier. So for smaller guys, they can just install everything in their base image and hide it based on login. For the medium to large guys, it gets really interesting. Because everybody knows you've got these tricky apps, right? You can AppV or layer, 80%, 90% if you're really lucky. And then what you've got left with is you've got to install all the rest of them in your base image, and then you get 19 base images because you don't want to have this app available to everybody, and then you got image sprawl, you got 19 plus the last one, plus the one before that, plus the one that's in dev, and now you've got 100 base images, and now you've got a horrible situation. If you want to try and keep it to that one base image, then you can install everything on the OS and then hide them. So it's really useful, especially when you've got complex apps, to I know this app will work if it's installed locally. Well, then install it locally, and we'll handle the rest.
Very cool. And that's, like you mentioned, that's the original FSLogix right there.
Yeah.
And then you guys also do some work around Java too. Can you describe that a bit?
So Java is interesting because This is such almost a Marmite product, not in love or hate it, but it's useful and not useful, right?
Java is sort of like Flash, but it's not as bad as Flash. But it's in the same bucket.
Yeah.
You know, it's in the same bucket. You love to hate it. I always describe Java as slow and chunky, but that's not necessarily the case anymore. And the web is powered on Java, as much as I hate to say that, but it's very much, it's very true. So yeah, I mean, and Java's so many different things too. You know, you have your web pieces, you have your apps. I mean, it's a behemoth, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I always love the fact that like somebody called JavaScript because they liked Java. But it's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
And it gets people. It's like, oh, why did you do that? That wasn't the best naming convention in the world.
Yeah.
So what's the problem with Java that we're trying to solve? So, if you have application A, which has been written specifically for one version of Java, and we all know that we have applications like that, or run into applications like that. Application B needs a different version of Java. Well, now you're screwed. So we help with that. Now, because we've got these application hiding and the filter driver and the rule set, we can actually hide or reveal different versions of Java installed on the local machine according to any variable you like, really. So a URL, we can say that if that URL in that tab opens up, then it's going to use this version of Java. If that process starts, then we'll make the other version of Java available to that application. And you can do a really cool demo actually where you get like 4 different tabs going to different, like, this is the version of Java you've got installed on your machine, and they'll all show that you've only got one and it's a different version. So it really helps people where they've got Java conflicts. Now, to a lot of people, they hear that and they go, meh, I don't care, I don't have a Java problem. The people who do have it, they go, give it me now.
Exactly. No, it's huge. That's huge. And there are so many. I mean, I have a Java application. So the IGL UMS is a Java app. And yeah. So, and I'm just one guy. You know. I'm a simple one guy. I'm a very simple guy. So enterprises, they got a lot of that stuff. Yeah. Anything? I think that's it for anything else you wanted to talk about with the solutions around FSLogix. I have more to go, so if you want to keep going, I would like to.
So around the stuff that we've got on the market now, that's probably about it. I'm sure I'll get a phone call from my marketing manager saying you missed out this or that, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, the good. Definitely, guys, check out what these guys are doing. If you haven't already, what FSLogix doing. Where are you guys going? Can you talk maybe a little bit about what's that's one of the coolest things I found about coming to a new company is you get to come inside, and you were an advisor, so you probably knew a lot. But you come inside a company, you start learning the things that so that's why that happened. Oh, so this makes sense, or this is coming. Is there anything that without getting a call from the lawyers, right? So you just gave away our secret sauce. Can you share anything with us, like around that line, those lines?
So, ish. I have to be very careful here. So I will get spanked by Kevin if I reveal too much. But if you look at what we've been doing, which is solving all of the problems around Office 365 and profiles, and also working really closely with Microsoft around sort of the journey to the cloud. So if we can make things easier for people to move to the cloud, move back, flip backwards and forwards between the two, and make that seamless in terms of all of your data, your settings, your configuration, then that would be a very cool thing to do. And stuff like that, essentially being the grease in the wheels for enterprises to take advantage of all of the new cloud stuff. Where we see opportunities like that, that's where we're going to make development efforts. That's where we're going to be spending our time.
Makes sense. Okay. Competition. Why should I care about what you guys are doing versus the other people? It just works, Doug.
It just works. It's a really good answer. It's simple. There's a whole lot of complexity hiding behind the simplicity. And that's the best way, right? Now, there's all sorts of interesting intricacies with this. So there's a thing called an altitude on a filter driver, which is who acts first in the stack. These are very important because Microsoft said that the most common cause of blue screens in Windows is third-party vendors' filter drivers interfering with each other. So this is a big deal for Microsoft to solve. So they have a thing called Plugfest, where everybody gets together in a big room and Microsoft says, you need to talk to this big list of people, you need to make sure you interrupt correctly, and you need to make sure that. And then you go in the big room and you do it, and you get an altitude, and it's officially signed by Microsoft. Microsoft will cross-sign your driver, and it will ensure that you will interoperate correctly with all of the other guys. If you don't do this, you can do something tricky, right? You can say, well, I'm going to put my driver at the top, which means you work, but screw the other guys below you who are acting second, third, fourth, and fifth. So it's really important to get these things right. And it's so important to Microsoft that if you've got Secure Boot on, I think after the Creators Edition, if you're not cross-signed by Microsoft, they won't even let you install. And if you're looking at the competition, what there is out there, look at stuff like this. Look at the attention to detail. Look at whether they're properly enterprise ready, and you'll find out. The list of people is just on the web, and there's all kinds of stuff like this, which I love about FSLogix. They've done all this work in the background, made it simple so you don't even know it's there, but it's all correct and done right.
Yeah. Well put. I like that. I had nothing to add there. That's well put. See, we sort of talked about, I had down we talked about the future things, and I had the future VUC, but we talked about the future VUC, but I'm going to throw it at you one thing, if you had a prediction, and if you say the year of VDI, I'm going to come fly to London and beat you. But if you have a prediction for the VUC, for let's say a year from now, what do you think? Where do you think we're going to be? More of the same, a little bit bigger, any drastic changes? Years.
I think trying to predict anything more than 6 months out is a mug's game because nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody has that expertise. I found that out over the last 20 years in the industry. What I do predict will happen as a general trend, though, is that the people who just do on-prem and are not considering the cloud, and particularly, there's cloud and cloud, right? If you are not doing on-demand with proper billing, proper licensing, with a true cloud model, and you're not already almost all the way there, then you're a couple of years behind, mate. So those companies that are either resting on their on-prem laurels and not putting enough investment into this, or even if they are putting investment into it, not doing it right, are going to find themselves in a lot of trouble very quickly.
Cool. Anything we left out, Jim? Anything else you'd like to talk about? Do you have anything what's your passion? Do you have any tech passions outside of, the typical EUC type of thing? Anything you're playing with that's really cool? Anything you want to share with us?
So I love a bit of automation. I love a bit of PowerShell. I've got a little YouTube channel talking about different bits of PowerShell. Current series is how to write GUIs with PowerShell.
Oh,
so
cool.
If people want to, no, I really adore that sort of thing. And for ages, I sort of ignored PowerShell in, I guess, being lazy. So, I know I need to learn that. I'll do it next week. And then when I finally did get around to it, I absolutely love it. I think it's wonderful. And it's growing in terms of my passion outside of the specific EUC stuff.
Sure. You like writing code then?
I do. I'm not quick.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I'm not quick at it. But I think the thing that code gives you is a number of small victories throughout your day.
Yeah.
It presents you with tiny problems that you can then And then that feeling of like, yeah, that was me. I did that. I solved it. Don't look on the internet for when somebody solved it much better than you. Avoid that.
Yeah. That's so. I like that way you say that. A few small victories, because I love to write code, and I don't get a chance to do it very much anymore. But when I do, I taught myself Objective-C a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that. And I started my life as a developer. I mean, that's what we all did in the 80s. Is you didn't, unless you played games, and I don't play games, so. I was a developer, and then my first job in IT was a development job too, which I hated with a passion because it was too early on, and all I did is write financial routines all day long, and I hated that. But yeah, it's. I think it's the greatest thing. It's the best video game. You can build anything you want, and PowerShell's amazing too. Like you said, I mean, you can build full apps in that thing, or not full apps, but really decent apps. So
no, I think you actually could build full apps in that. They'd be slow, but you could do it. I mean, if you are going to build a proper app, do it in C#, don't do it in PowerShell. But it would be possible to do it in PowerShell.
Yeah, that's really impressive. It's come a long way since VB script. You know what I mean? What was before batch language? And there was a couple. What was the one? Do you remember that one? There was like a high. It was sort of like batch, but it was before VB script. You could write logic in it, and I can't think of the name. Do you remember that by chance?
No, I don't.
Ah, gosh. Kix. Was it Kix?
Kix. Yeah. All the Kix scripts for logon. I remember all of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was that was first of us getting some a scripting language. And in fact, when I first downloaded Java and HTML, which were basically day one, I looked at it and I was like, this is a scripting tool. This is just a markup language. This doesn't impress me. And I went back to C, and nowadays I regret that decision so heavily because I never learned it in detail. And nowadays I regret that. So I'm slow and chunky around those languages. C I can write, but not good, but I can write it.
I remember sort of as an old sysadmin, I used to love batch just because I could even start to automate stuff back in there. Yeah. And I used to live in the for command in batch because it was the only command that had any kind of like complexity or subtlety to it.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to do cool stuff, it's like, right, I'll just use the for command for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I used to write scripts, and half of which started with for.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. If there's one thing I miss about engineering, it's what you call automation is taking a problem and then scripting a solution for it, right? And but there's a negative to that too. People like you and I will create these complex scripts, and then we leave, and then someone's like, "What the heck was he doing?" Or you go back to it a year later, and you're like, "What the heck was I doing?"
Yeah, learn to comment your code, otherwise you can't read it.
Well,
but yeah, even now, I go into organizations, and maybe I'll write them a PowerShell script, or maybe somebody else will have written, and all they need to do is open it up and change one variable to make it work. But they won't do it. Somehow it's alien. Somehow it's weird. No, that's somebody else's thing. I don't do that at all.
Yeah.
And I find that attitude just strange. If you're a technologist and you're scared of a PS1 file, then I'm not quite sure what you're doing. If you're relying on point and click, then you're going to be automated out of a job.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think it's human nature, Jim. I really think it's human nature, and I go back to when this hit me in the head is when CSG came around way back in 2002, and I was doing a session at one of Citrix's EBCs, and I asked people, how many of you guys have installed CSG? It's been out for maybe 3-4 months or something, and I had the partners in the room, so the techies and things like that. And one guy raised his hand, and I stopped, and I was like, well, what do you mean, why? And they didn't say anything. I was like, no, I'm not going to continue until you tell me why. I want to know why you haven't. And it came down to they were scared of SSL. They didn't know SSL, and you had to have a script, of course. Excuse me, and or not a cert. And so they sort of stayed away from it, right? And I think it's sort of, and it hit me, it's like, this is human nature. When there's something new, not everyone wants to do it right away. Or they'll say, okay, I'm going to find a time when I can sit down and do this, when I get a bigger chunk of time. Well, that bigger chunk of time never comes, right? We're always so busy. So I think it's very much human nature to not want to leave your comfort zone, right? And that's what I say.
So
what I say separates the men from the boys.
I got to disagree with you there, Doug. I think it's human nature to want to get out there and to explore and to find new things and to do innovative stuff. That's what I feel is human nature. Well, I do agree with you. There are people like you say who are like, I don't want to do something new. But there is the other side of that coin, which is this new stuff is exciting and cool and wonderful. Let's get my hands dirty.
Yeah. Well, I think like I said, like I ended, I think it separates the men from the boys, right? The boys are the guys that, or the girls from the women, right? Where it's the boys are the guys that just like their comfort zone, and the men are the ones that are like, okay, yeah, let's go find a new world, right? And let's explore, as you said. Perfect analogy. So yeah, I see your point. I definitely see your point, but it's a I've always looked at evangelizing and what we do, even outside of, the evangelist role, but what we've all done for so long as community people and getting up and talking is turning people on to what you're doing and getting them on that train and getting them to spot these new things so that they want to do it. They get over that hurdle. And it comes down to a simple phrase I learned when I joined Citrix, a guy named Jim Moyle, if you know Jimmy, it was his mantra, which was our goal was to speed up the sales cycle by overcoming technical hurdles. In the sales cycle, it doesn't have to be selling a product. It can be, speed up the product cycle or the development cycle or the engineering cycle, right? Is spotting those hurdles, diving into it, solving those problems, and then getting that win, as you said, and then being like, look how cool I am. I solved that. Now on to the next problem, right? And those are the gaps that we fill. And
thank you, Doug. You've just described perfectly what FSLogix does as a company.
I like it. Hey,
see, I like the way you tied that round, and nice bow at the end, full circle. There you go.
And you are right. That is exactly that's Kevin's mantra too, right? Let's find a gap and let's fill it. And and that's, if you look at anything the man has done for the 20 years I've known him, it's always about finding a really big gap and filling it with a really simple solution. So exactly. Well, I guess we can call it quits then, right? You've had enough of me?
I guess we can. Doug, I've never had enough of you, but perhaps we should leave the audience alone.
Okay, Jim, I thank you for that. So on that note, I'll go ahead and give you the last word, and I'll say thank you very much.
Just come along. If you see us at a booth, at a show, or you see us presenting, or you just want to know a bit more of us, go to the website, have a bit of fun. We do free trials. Register and you'll get you going super quick.
Perfect.
So get out there and play.
And if somebody wants to follow you, if they're not already following you, how do they do that?
I'm at Jim Moyle on Twitter, and like I said, I've got a YouTube channel where if you just search for my name, Jim Moyle, Moyle, in the YouTube search box, then you'll find my PowerShell stuff there as well.
Perfect. I'll throw it in the show notes, guys, too. So Jim is definitely, if you don't know Jim, and you probably all do, you're all sitting, Doug, we know Jim. But in case the guy doesn't know Jim, I'll throw his contact info in the Twitter and his YouTube channel and stuff like that in the show notes. Show notes are always interesting to go follow the guys that are on the show and things like that, and learn a little bit more in the links. So
I'll also chuck my FSLogix email address in there as well.
Perfect. And Jim, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. This was very painless, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it's almost like a little chat with an old friend. So yeah.
Hey, I got called a friend. I'll take that. Okay. Thank you again.
Cheers, Doug.
Okay, that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. You know what? I'm glad Jim sort of wrapped that thing up because we could have talked forever. I loved talking with the guy. Super smart guy. Very, very super smart guy. But every time I see him, he likes to give me crap. So it's a little bit trouble with Jim. I don't know if I'm going to be... He's not as bad as good old Alex, Pub Forum Alex, but he is almost in the lines with Alex. One of my favorite people. So on that note, please definitely follow what Jim is doing. Like I said, very smart guy, but check out FSLogix, one of the best companies out there. And like we said, Kevin and team, you have Randy over there and Brad, a bunch of guys. Well, it's a big company nowadays. And they've always had this mindset of making simple products that work, that solve a real problem. They didn't go create a solution and then try to find a problem. They found a problem and then they fixed it, and then that became a solution. And that's what Kevin's done since day one. So it's really a great company with great products. Check out what they're doing if you have not already. And if you have, come back and check. Maybe it's gotten better. It has gotten better. So check it out again. And, of course, I want to thank each and every one of you guys for listening to DABCC Radio. Without you, well, I'm nobody but a guy with a microphone talking to myself, and that's not fun for me at all. So thank you so much. If you liked it, tell a friend. That's how we grow the podcast. And definitely head on over to www.dabcc.com for the latest and greatest cloud, virtualization, desktop mobility, you name it, AI, IoT, FSLogix, iGel, news and support resources. It's all there. We even have an application on the web for you guys. Or on the web. Yeah, it's an application on the app stores. So on iTunes and Android, believe it or not. So head over there, just search for DABCC, download it, and have fun with it, guys. So on that note, I'll just shut up and say thank you so much for listening to DABCC Radio.
Can you say DABCC?
DABC.
Say it again, DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again, DABCC?
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.